Today we're going to make some homemade chicken stock. I need this for a few Thanksgiving-based recipes, so I figured I'd show you guys how I make my chicken stock. It's very easy. We're going to start with a rotisserie chicken. Look at all those good juices already in there. But basically, you're going to come in, some are tied up, so you're going to uncut them, and then just start pulling all the meat off the bones. I like to throw the meat into a separate container on the side here. I'm going to throw it into that bowl, and I'm just going to make some chicken salad out of it. Real good dual purpose here. You can make the broth and get something out of it. If you have the ability to just go to a butcher and ask for bones, you could also totally do that. But I like to basically just pull apart anything that has gelatinous kind of connective tissue on it, anything that has some cartilage, anything that has bones, so you get your full breast will pull off when you do this. It's super easy. Try to do this when it's hot also, because it's much easier to take the chicken apart. But anything that feels like bone, cartilage, connective tissue, just take that, throw it to the side, and that's what we're going to use to make the stock. It's super simple. Once I get all the meat out of there, look at all that good stuff left over in the bottom too. That's going to be the great beginning of this broth. I'm going to add just some chopped up celery, carrots, and onion. You can use other aromatics if you want. I'm using this broth as a base for like gravies, red wine sauces, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to season all those separately. So I'm not going to put too much in my stock from the beginning, but on top of the celery, carrot, onion, you could add bay leaves, you could add rosemary, thyme, anything else you like in your broth, especially if you can use it as more of just a soup. But very loose cut everything. They're just going to sit in there floating. If you want to pull some of that outer layer of the onion off, that's also totally fine. You could also leave it in there. It doesn't matter. You're going to strain all of this. But now we're just going to toss this all into a pot. We're going to add our chicken and everything into the pot, and we're going to fill it up with water about halfway. Once you get it to there, bring it up to a simmer. You don't want to boil anything here. That's not the goal. It's to reduce over long periods of time. You can see there's some little bubbles now starting, so it's getting up to temperature. I'm going to give it a mix because the bottom is hotter than the top. Just kind of how these big pot boils work. You got to keep the water mixing a little bit in the beginning to get the temperature evenly distributed. But once you do that and you get a little bit of a simmer, I'm going to partially cover it and let it sit for about an hour. After an hour, you can see all these little bubble spots. That's oil. That's fat. You want to come in and just scoop that out. Do it any way you know how. You could use paper towel, you could use a spoon, but just get that out after that first hour. Here we are after around 2 hours. You could see real reduction has happened. I don't want it this fully reduced this early, so I'm going to add extra water in. If it's getting more reduced than you want, just add water and keep reducing. All those flavors are still in there. You're not doing any damage to it. You're just keeping it at the water level you want. This is a little bit too much of a boil for me, but towards the end it gets real hot, so just keep it moving. That's all you got to do. Once you reduce it now to your desired amount, strain out all the liquid and make sure you're not pouring this down the drain. I've seen so many people on the internet do that. Make sure you're catching the broth in something as you strain it out. Give it a good shake. There's a lot of good juices left in those bones. And you're left with that beautiful yellow colored stock. It's fantastic. Now to strain it a little bit, take whatever vessel you're going to store it in, put some cheesecloth in it, and pour it through that. Very easy to do. There's still going to be fat left over. There's still going to be pieces, but that's fine. It's homemade stock. That's what you're going to get out of this. But once you fill up that jar, it should look something like this. You don't want to see huge chunks, but it should be overall cloudy, clear. Depending on how much water and how much liquid you do, this in the fridge is going to turn into like Jell-O. Mine was a little more water-based, so it is not as gelatinous. But after about 24 hours, I just come in, I skim off this fat, and you're good to use. Keep skimming it off every time you use it. It's hard to get. Once you mix it up a little bit, that fat's going to sink. It'll rise back to the surface. Skim it again, but that's all you need to do. This should last a few weeks, especially if you freeze it. Absolutely delicious and so easy to make homemade chicken stock.